Hello, and welcome to the Road to B2 English podcast. My name is Emily, and unfortunately, Anna cannot be with us today. Last time this happened, it was because Anna was not feeling so good. This time, we both had very, very interesting technical difficulties. This is the first time that we have actually been late on an episode, so my apologies to everyone. I hope that everyone is doing okay and that you have not missed us just at all, really. It's weird doing an episode on your own. I feel like I have lost my other half, but hopefully we will be okay, as today it's going to be a nice, short, quick episode dedicated to the use of English exam. Simply because I hear a lot of students complaining about this part of the Cambridge B2 C1 English exams. So I wanted to talk about it, some of the things that are worth mentioning about this exam, some interesting bits of information to help people cope with the difficult questions that you may see, and some tips that I always give to my other students about the use of English exam. If you are not already aware, the Cambridge English, what's wrong with my brain today? The B2 English exam is comprised of a writing, reading, speaking, listening. But in the part where you do your reading at the beginning of the test, you also have a use of English part to complete. The use of English exam is designed to teach you how to use English appropriately using prepositions, expressions, and phrasal verbs. There are 4 questions within the use of English exam that I would like to talk about today. First of all, we have a multiple choice question. You receive a paragraph, and inside this paragraph there are 8 gaps of words that you need to put in the right, or you need to choose the correct word to put in that sentence. For each word, there are 4 options, so you have to choose the correct option. This normally means that there is some kind of verb that needs a complement, or maybe you have to choose between countable nouns and uncountable nouns, or maybe you need to choose the correct preposition for a phrasal verb, these typical things. But this is the easiest one because it is multiple choice, and generally the answers can be pretty logical. It gets slightly more difficult as we continue. Question number 2 is one that many of my students have some issues with. This is the open close. Once again, you receive another paragraph, probably about a different topic, with 8 gaps throughout the paragraph. Instead of having a multiple choice option, what you have to do is fill in each gap with the word that you think fits that space. So, for example, that could be a connector that you think would work, like although, or however, or something that works in the context of that sentence. This could also mean that you need some kind of phrasal verb once again, maybe a verb for the phrasal verb or a preposition once again, but you don't have the option to compare between different answers like you do in question 1 in the multiple choice, which makes it a little bit more complicated. The next question, question 3, is word formation. I find word formation to be the most fun of the use of English exams, but I understand that a lot of my students find it quite tough. The same situation as before, you receive another paragraph about a different topic, but it is different to question 1. It's not multiple choice. And it's different to question 2 because you don't have to put any word that you think works in there. You actually receive a word. For example, an adjective. We could say beautiful, for instance. But you have to change that word or use the root, the stem of that word, to create a different class of word that would work in that sentence. So imagine we have the word beautiful. And we have a sentence like, the gap of the paintings is clear to see. I can't say the beautiful of the paintings, because even though this is the word that I have been given, An adjective is not the correct word to use in that context. So what we have to do is change the word beautiful to the word beauty, a noun. The beauty of the paintings is clear to see. And then the sentence makes sense, right? So throughout every single one of the questions in question 3, you have to change the word that you are given, maybe from an adjective to a noun, or a noun to a verb, in order for the sentence to make grammatical sense. And then finally, we have the last question, which is absolutely the most difficult question of them all, or the difficult series of questions of them all. It's keyword transformations. First of all, you receive a sentence. So, for instance, you may receive a simple sentence about some information, like the key could be on the table. And then you receive a special word, a keyword, that you have to use in your second sentence that has the same meaning as the first. So, you complete the second sentence so that it has a similar meaning to the first sentence using the word given. You cannot change the word that you are given, though. So, for instance, we said the key could be on the table. And we need to use the key word is have. Perhaps we could say Carlos might have left the key on the table. So we have to use that word have. Okay, we cannot change it, but we can add some extra words to change the structure of the sentence so that the sentence makes grammatical sense and the meaning of the first sentence and the second sentence are similar. It's complicated. And honestly, I think that the fourth question or the fourth block of questions in the use of English exam are really, really difficult. But if you have time to practice, if you spend some time working hard on your abilities, working hard on different practice questions, you will be used to the structure of the exam before the exam starts. So, that's the general structure of these exams, but that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to maybe complain a little bit about the use of English exam from Cambridge, because I personally, as an English teacher, obviously, I don't think that the use of English exam is the best way to express your use of English. Of course, when you use English in real life, what are you doing? You communicate with others, you speak to friends, you make new friends, you get a job. There's lots of different things that involve use of English that are not about quickly answer these questions and use the correct word to fill the gap. This is not very realistic. It's not a very realistic use of English exam, at least. In order to complete this exam, in order to get a good grade and pass the entire exam, the use of English exam is essential to achieve that. And that's why a lot of my students panic, because use of English is so difficult. But what can we do? How can we cope with this problem? Well, the solution is a little bit weird. It's a little bit of a unexpected solution. My recommendation to all of my students, especially for questions like the open-close, question 2, and the word formation in question 3, is to translate the sentence into your native language. When you make this translation from English to Spanish, English to Chinese, whatever it is, you will most likely discover the word that you are missing from that translation. So if anything, it's not really a use of English exam, it's a use of your native language exam or a translation exam. But what you have to do is stretch your mind a little bit, test your flexibility by translating some parts of the paragraph. Of course, you don't have very much time, so only focus on the parts that you consider necessary. Pay, and this is my second point, pay close attention to punctuation. Remember that some words don't have commas afterwards, like but, for instance. So if you feel like you need to use a contrasting connector but there is a comma after the gap, then you cannot use a word like but. Pay close attention to where full stops, commas, exclamations are. Pay close attention to where connectors are in the sentence. This is why I tell my students to translate. Once you translate something, you get a stronger idea of what you are reading and what you're going to fill in the gaps about. It seems like a silly thing to do for someone who is trying to do an English exam, but I think it's important for my students and for all of you to remember that you're not doing the use of English in order to speak English. You're doing the use of English exam in order to pass the English exam, right? I think that a lot of students forget that these exams are created simply to make your life a little bit more difficult. So I don't think that it's a good idea to panic so much about these exams from the perspective of learning the language. Translating something into your native language doesn't mean that you have failed. It means that you are trying to find a way to answer the question effectively. In fact, it's the opposite of failing. That's how you pass. Okay? So if anybody was feeling particularly worried about that, there you have it. That's my advice to you. Two main things that I would keep in mind. First of all, this is a translation exam. The first 3 questions in the 4 questions for the use of English are all about translating different things and seeing which words would work. Use your process of elimination if you're not sure in the multiple choice questions, right? If you don't know the answer to the question, then don't worry about it too much. Leave it and continue to the next, and then come back if you have some time at the end. Okay? So the first thing is translating everything. The second thing is be very, very aware of your punctuation. One more thing I want to talk about before I leave you is the fact that this particular exam has always been very fascinating to me because there are some things that a student cannot infer. So we talked about, at the beginning of this episode, we talked about how the use of English exam is very useful when it comes to things like phrasal verbs and expressions. But if you want to pass this exam and if you want to get a very good grade, sometimes that means that you have to be a little bit lucky. Some people maybe don't know the expressions in the exam because they haven't studied these expressions, they have studied some different expressions. Or maybe they can't remember a very small, unnecessary expression that they have never used in normal life. This is the common occurrence when it comes to these kinds of exams, that you have to know some expressions that you have never really used. And there are so many different expressions in English. So it's luck. It's a lucky exam. If you are lucky and you receive questions that you know the answers to, that's great. But if you understand the question but you don't know how to structure it because you don't have the expression to hand, try not to panic about that as well. One of the greatest problems is the last question, the keyword transformations, creating a new sentence with a first sentence, because the quantity of expressions and difficult bits of grammar is just so frustrating that a lot of my students just can't do it. They find it too stressful. But the truth is that the majority of the points that you get in this exam are focused on question 1, 2, and 3. If you get some points in the use of English part 4, then that's awesome. But try not to put too much pressure on yourself to do this impeccably, perfectly, because it's not going to help you in the long run. The use of English exam is very, very complicated indeed. So my recommendation is to practice different expressions, practice verb complements, prepositions where they would normally go, and do some practice tests. One of my favourite websites for practice exams is called englishrevealed.co.uk. englishrevealed.co.uk has some free tests, and if you log in, you can get some extra tests on top of that. So it's pretty good. I believe also they have a payment option where you can get some premium tests. I know some students who have tried this and they have been very satisfied. So this is I'm we're not even associated with this website, but as a teacher, I always found this website extremely useful. You get all of the answers to the questions, and you also get an explanation for why that answer is correct. So there's my recommendation to you guys. Make sure you keep studying. Make sure that you don't panic too much about this exam, and keep in mind that the placement of punctuation and your ability to translate are perhaps some of the most important things to consider when doing this exam. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I know it's been a little bit boring because it's just me. And I know that I speak a little bit quickly when I'm on my own as well. So I suppose that this episode probably has been quite difficult in comparison to a normal episode. Please let me know in the comments if this has been useful or interesting for any of you. And I will also leave a link in the description to the website that I just mentioned for anybody who is practicing this particular exam. I hope that these tips have helped you today, and hopefully, assuming that my internet is working and that Anna's computer hasn't exploded, we will see you next week with a normal episode. Thank you very, very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.